is the sound good for Ms. Gabrielle? Are you ready to start?
Yes, thank you. We will do our best with the sound, and Ms. Gabrielle has been very, very patient with us, so thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we're ready to start.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, then I will. I have the honor of calling this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 15, Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I am joining you today from the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinantan nations. Pursuant to the order of reference of April 20th, 2020, the committee is meeting for the purpose of receiving evidence concerning matters related to the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. During this meeting, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. In order to facilitate the work of our interpreters and ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. In order to resolve the sound issues raised in recent virtual committee meetings and ensure clear audio transmission, we ask those who wish to speak during the meetings to set your interpretation language as follows. If speaking in English, please ensure you are on the English channel. If speaking in French, please ensure that you are on the French channel. As you are speaking, if you plan to alternate from one language to the other, you'll need also to switch the interpretation channel so it aligns with the language that you are speaking. You may want to allow for a short pause when switching languages. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can either click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, or you can hold down the space bar while you are speaking, and when you release the bar, the mic will mute itself just like a walkie-talkie. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should members need to request the floor outside of their designated time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. If a member wishes to intervene on a point of order that has been raised by another member, they should use the raise hand function. This will signal the chair your interest to speak, and in order to do so, you should click on participants at the bottom of the screen, and when the list pops up, you will see next to your name that you can click raise hand. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be mute. The use of headphones is strongly encouraged. If you have earbuds with a microphone, please hold the microphone near your mouth when you're speaking to boost the sound quality for our interpreters. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to interpretation, or if you accidentally are disconnected, please advise the chair or the clerk immediately, and the technical team will work to resolve them. And please note that we may need to suspend during these times, as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Before we get started, can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure they are on gallery view? With this view, you should be able to see all the participants in a grid view and will ensure that all video participants can see one another. During this meeting, we'll follow the same rules that usually apply to opening statements and the rounds for questioning of witnesses during our regular meetings. Each witness will have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement, followed by the usual rounds of questions from members. And so now, let me introduce our witnesses. Representing their views as individuals, we have Eric Cardinal and Ellen Gabriel. From the Kativik Ilisarniliranik, I hope I got that right, Robert Watt is president. And from the Sheridan College, Elijah Williams, Director of Indigenous Engagement for the Center for Indigenous Learning and Support. So, Mr. Cardinal, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to present before this committee. Your work is very important. Now, when I look at how the management of the COVID-19 crisis is being experienced in Indigenous communities, one thing strikes me. It's the marked difference between the measures taken or desired by Indigenous leaders and those adopted by non-Indigenous communities. This divide is particularly evident in regions where we have seen Indigenous communities adopt much stricter measures more quickly than their non-Aboriginal neighbors. For example, most First Nations in Quebec quickly closed their communities to prevent the virus from entering them. We have also seen First Nations maintain the closure of certain services and institutions while the province decreed that they be opened. Why this distinction then? First of all, for health reasons. Because Indigenous populations, as you know, present higher risk factors than others for COVID-19 due to their particular health, social, and economic situation. In particular, obesity, diabetes.
The sound in the interpretation seems to be cutting in and out. So it's hard to follow the sound if the interpreter's voice is cutting in and out. Sorry to bother everybody.
No problem. Madam Clerk, we aware of is this a singular problem with Ms. Zan, or are there other issues?
I'll check that out right away.
Suspend just briefly. Cardinal.
Alors, donc, comme je disais, il y a...
So I was saying there is a significant distinction between what the Indigenous populations and the non-Indigenous populations are doing. So the issue of health, obviously, and also Indigenous communities have much higher occupancy rates per dwelling than the non-Indigenous populations, making it even more difficult to comply with the social distancing measures. And it must be remembered that the First Nations have been particularly marked by past epidemics, which resulted in traumas, both psychological and cultural, that still persist today. Also, and this is the focus of my presentation today, is a distinct management in Indigenous communities that's based on the right to self-government, a concept whose recognition is being challenged in this period of pandemic. This crisis particularly highlights the difficulty for governments to recognize the status of governments to entities otherwise known as band councils. To illustrate this, I will use 3 examples of First Nations in Quebec. The first example is the one that has received the most media coverage in recent weeks. It concerns the issue of the reopening of Oka Park, a park under the responsibility of the government of Quebec, but located on the unceded territory of the Mohawk Nation, and whose opening was decreed without any consultation with the authorities of the Mohawk Council of Kanasatake. This example, they came up with improvised roadblocks. This was during the Patriots Feast, and there was a conflict that ensued between the Mohawk Council and the provincial government, forcing the federal government to intervene. This example shows that government officials don't have the reflex of consulting First Nations leaders when they take decisions concerning these so-called non-unceded territories, and most of Quebec territory is under this. So the absence of consultation is seen even if there is a territorial negotiation ongoing, as we see in the Oka region with the Mohawks. The 2 other examples that were less mediatized, despite efforts made, they show to what point government services are always caught up in this colonial Indian Act. I can give the example of the Long Point in Abitibi. They decreed the shutting of their community and tried to impose strict travel restrictions on their members. Without any police force, it called upon the services of the Sûreté du Québec, which is the provincial police. They had regular police patrolling, but they say they do not have the authority to enforce the First Nations measures. Why? Because the community located in the village of Winnaway is not officially a reserve within the meaning of the Indian Act. Therefore, even if it is recognized that since at least the report of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People in 1996, that self-government is an inherent Aboriginal right protected under Section 35 of the Constitutional Act of 1982, and even though the federal government theoretically recognizes the councils as First Nations governments, we are still a long way from this recognition. For the third example, we move to Gaspésie Peninsula.
Onto those points, and I'm sure they'll come up again so that you can complete later on in our panel. Right now,
écoutez, je vais sauter mon troisième.
Well, I will. Gaspeg is not really a reserve, so they don't have any government emergency assistance, which is offered to all the First Nations. I just wanted to point out that before the COVID-19 crisis and that which the rail crisis that preceded it, the federal government had started some reconciliation. We should make sure that these crises do not cause a backsliding in relationship between the federal government and the First Nations.
Sir, we understand. That's fine, and I don't want to lose any of the testimony you wish to present, but in order to keep the meeting organized, we go by our time limits on speakers and questions. And so, but I'm sure that if we don't hear further testimony that you wish to have, that it can be sent to us via letter so that we don't miss anything. Right now, I'd like to call on Mr. Robert Watt, the president of the Kativik Ilisarnilirinik. Sir, how close did I come?
Not too close.
Sorry. 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
My name is Robert Watt. I'm the president of Kativik Ilisarnilirinik, the school board of Nunavik. I would first like to thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to have the opportunity of informing you about how the Nunavik education sector has been affected by COVID-19 pandemic. As you are aware, the school year ended March 23rd in Nunavik, and now we are planning to reopen school in August. This school is aligned to the health and safety measures announced for Nunavik as our communities open slowly. These unprecedented times have highlighted key needs in education, and I would like to focus on 6 recommendations that are essential for education in Nunavik. I filed a briefing document with the committee, where you will find comprehensive background on each of these recommendations, and I encourage you to read it. Recommendation number 1, telecommunication infrastructures without access to broadband/high-speed internet. There is no real prospect for distance education and online education platforms to develop as a serious service offering in the youth, adult, and post-secondary sectors in Nunavik. Access to technology. In Nunavik, a region where the cost of living is particularly high, the 2018 median income of Inuit families was of $25,627 compared to $61,400 for the rest of Canada. So families and students must be provided the financial means to acquire. This is essential to ensure as learning is likely to increasingly shift towards online platforms and tools. Testing as we proceed with the reopening of our schools and adult education centers, and in order to monitor transportation networks and institutions, it will be important for the Nunavik organizations and air carriers servicing our communities to have access to COVID-19 testing with reduced delays for obtaining results. On the backdrop of a high tuberculosis rate and a recent history of devastating epidemics, this is key to addressing the fear and anxiety many Nunavik feel about the prospect of reopening our communities. Water and sewer services. Access to water and sewer services remain an ongoing issue in Nunavik. Lack of water or sewage service is a recurring cause of school closure in most of our communities. In the context of COVID-19, where the main health measure is to wash your hands frequently, we need to see infrastructure investments that will support and ensure sustainable maintenance of our water, sewer services beyond this pandemic. We see a continuously growing student population and a renewed interest for post-secondary studies at a distance. We need to see infrastructure investments that will support the Nunavik education system beyond the immediate measures announced in the context of this pandemic. This includes school and adult education centers, construction, renovation, expansion, housing for employees, student residences in the adult sector, and study space for post-secondary students. And lastly, and not least, is on the land education and Inuktitut language protection. The educational resources, digital content, online platforms, and curriculum developed by the school board are available in Inuktitut, English, and French. We need to recognize that guaranteeing consistent access to content in Inuktitut that has been developed from an Inuit perspective requires additional time, specific expertise, and can only happen adequate funding. On the land, education programs and activities offer unique educational opportunities that connect youth to their language, identity, and communities. They play a critical role in strengthening the Inuktitut language and require adequate funding. At the school board, on the land education and educational excursions have benefited from the support of New Paths for Education, a program formerly administered under Indigenous and Northern Affairs. Discussions on the transfer of funding available through this program to the province of Quebec are recurrently occurring. This means that federal funding the school board currently relies on for on-the-land education could be distributed to the of Education of Quebec. We would like to stress the utmost importance of ensuring a seamless transition of this program, as a gap in accessing to funding could jeopardize some of the culturally relevant activities offered by our schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And unfortunately, some of your presentation was not captured because of the internet connection. So, oops, I'll do that. So, but you did say at the beginning that the points were, we have those 6 points that you made. Hopefully, along the way, we'll be able to solve the internet connections. But we'll continue on now, and hopefully, Ms. Gabriel, if you're all ready to go, we'll see how your 5 minutes of testimony works out technically. So please go ahead, and then we'll, Mr. Pawlowski, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, kind of a point of order. So far in this committee, we're yet to see this. It's fantastic. I think we're getting translation from Inuktitut into English. Is that not remarkable? I think that's fantastic. But is this something that's always available?
Madam Clerk?
The witness was speaking English, but we do offer third language interpretation with advance notice.
Oh well, they were totally non-lined up, so I figured that we were getting a translation because speaking the voice was going in a totally different. So sorry about that.
Okay, so that's because of the connection, which is slow. Ms. Gabriel, can you go ahead now for 5 minutes?
Yeah. With condorados to all the parliamentary committee members. Like many people around the world, when the pandemic began, who felt like we were walking through a dystopic world in a blindfold, there was no leadership in the community for at least a month. We were vulnerable to outside community members coming in to buy marijuana or cigarettes. And it took a while for the emergency response unit to actually declare a pandemic on March 23rd. My apologies to the translators. I realize I have 5 minutes and not enough time. The fact that the businesses in Kanesatake and in Kahnawake have been vilified and ostracized by colonial entities made it more problematic, and we felt even more vulnerable at the start of this pandemic. As you may know, we live in a community that has 3 centuries of fighting for our rights to our homelands being ignored. And when you have no rights in a pandemic, this does not improve the situation of fear or uncertainty and of more land dispossession. This problematic perspective, of course, is rooted in institutionalized and societal racism, which devalues Indigenous peoples' lives, which have been subjugated by colonizations and its impacts. As the declaration of a pandemic was declared by Prime Minister Trudeau, Indigenous peoples were still in the throes of the Wet'suwet'en protests, anti-pipeline protests, Indigenous rights, and the pandemic suppressed this movement. And we understand why, because of the health precautions. The construction workers and police remained occupied on Wet'suwet'en lands, and they continued in spite of an MOU with the traditional hereditary chiefs. And so in Kanesatake, we were trying to deal with economics before rights. We have an elders home that was shut down when the pandemic was declared, so we have no cases there. I should clarify that the community I come from, Kanesatake, was also the Oka crisis, and I heard one of the previous speakers mentioned Oka Park, and that's where I'm coming from. There was a meeting that was made up mostly of local Mohawk merchants, and because we were told to stay home in COVID-19, nobody knew about this, in spite of people like Teresa Tams telling everybody to stay home. But even so, even in spite of my hesitancy, I do agree with the checkpoints that were put up. There is a preconceived notion, and we are a community villainized by the media and the government. And there remains a fallacy that we are lawless. And so public attitudes dictate that no laws apply to our community, even during a pandemic. So we had youth from spring break coming to our community as if this was their playground. The pandemic has caused us to be more vulnerable inside our checkpoints. Many human rights abuses were committed and harassed. The people at the checkpoints were harassed even by the SQ, by a doctor and the mayor of Oka. And these are outlined in my written submission. And as Indigenous people, we are shut out and silenced by the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Relations, Carolyn Bennett. She silences the voices of the traditional government. This is too big an issue to discuss at this parliamentary committee, but on a daily basis, we feel vulnerable, especially when land dispossession is continuing because construction has been allowed while everybody is told to stay home and self-isolate. We do not have a voice, and I think it's safe to say that we suffer from chronic fatigue of institutionalized racism. As Indigenous peoples, we have been made to feel as we are dispensable throughout our lives by a settler society that has not come to the realization that our rights are human rights. We are peoples with the right to self-determination, but Canada still exerts colonial oppression, stalling any progress that could be made if they upheld the various international human rights norms that they are signatories to. Instead, we are placated with engagement sessions that benefit the colonizers' dispossession of our inherent rights. This year, on July 11th in 2020, marks the 30th anniversary of the siege of Ganasadaga and Ganawage, which you know as the Oka Crisis. It is a time of awakening and 3 centuries-long dispute by Ganyakahaga of Ganasadaga. The Rudinusishaga people have been excluded. As we witness in the US and the international outrage of Black Lives Matter and the murder of George Floyd, we see once again the heavy toll that institutionalized racism has taken. Canada has had plenty of opportunities to make the sorely needed changes now. It's time for reconciliation and reparations, pandemic or not. Economic self-interest has been the root of colonization, the free market capitalist, and the global economy. As the first peoples of Turtle Island, we are never given the respect for our rights on a daily basis, and more so in a pandemic. And in the protests and the blockades will continue. The teachings of our ancestors tell us that there can be no peace in an atmosphere of fear. There can be no justice when we fight every day for the respect of our fundamental human rights. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. And I'm sure, I know that our time seems limited, but over the next hour and several minutes, I'm sure you'll be able to expand on some of your points. As we move now for our final speaker, the Director of Indigenous Engagement for the Center for Indigenous Learning and Support, Sheridan College, Elijah Williams. Mr. Williams, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Witnesses and honorable members, I'm honored to be here with you virtually, and I am speaking from Oakville, which is on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Wendat people, and my own people, the Haudenosaunee. I'll be speaking about a snapshot of what I heard from Indigenous learners in the face of COVID-19 in post-secondary. So COVID-19 has brought out many unprecedented challenges that nobody expected. Post-secondary education was no exception to the pandemic. Students and many of our Indigenous learners had to adjust to a new way of learning through a virtual experience. In my work as Director of Indigenous Engagement, we heard from many students regarding this change. Many felt they had a hard time adjusting. There were students who had no access to proper internet services on reserve, and in some cases had to drive to a nearby town or Tim Hortons parking lot to conduct their studies to access Wi-Fi. School is already stressful as it is, but when this happened, it added a new layer of stress. Students did not have access to spaces on campus anymore where they would normally conduct their studies or have access to Indigenous centers for cultural support. We heard a lot about technology as being an issue for students. A lot of people don't have access to computers or have their own computers, so access to campuses are a huge priority. So at Sheridan, we provided a laptop loan program to students in critical need. It is easy for us who live outside of a reserve community or rural area to immediately switch to remote work and learning, but for many of our students and people, this was not the case. Many were out of work, many could not access those important support services that they require without having to go in person. So when I bring up the post-secondary student support program, which is the main program that administers band funding, and each band has a different way of interpreting the national policy on this. And we heard from many students who had a difficult time receiving support from their band, as many were living far away from their community. Some students are required to have attendance sheets because of the immense administrative burden the program places on students and staff. And I also want to bring up the follow-up paperwork that needs to be submitted. Despite COVID-19 and despite everyone having to adjust to a new way of working and learning, the deadlines to submit your follow-up paperwork submissions did not change because of COVID-19. And in fact, it stayed with the status quo. I know in my own community of 6 Nations of the Grand River, a lot of people still had to follow the same deadlines, and if they didn't have internet or a computer to apply online for a May 1st deadline, they were not eligible. So when I bring this up, I really hope that people can understand that this program really needs to be nimble. The information regarding supports for Indigenous learners was not clear, and there was no update or guidelines on students who are being funded through their bands. In my belief, stronger communication between government, organization, and post-secondary institutions will ensure students are being supported as best they can, because we at the school have direct contact with many of our learners. The funding formulas for this program should be examined as many as there's more students applying to post-secondary. And as the country reopens, many will need to reskill and potentially go back to school. I also heard from 2 different students from different communities up north in Northern Ontario, where they were not allowed to go back to the community because of access restrictions. They had to remain living off the reserve because of that. In my view, it appears that Indigenous learners and people are in the gray area when it comes to post-secondary, as it's mainly a provincial responsibility. However, I know our federal government has a duty to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis as well. So before I end, I also want to share some exciting news with all of you. So despite the challenges of COVID-19, we did have 51 Indigenous learners graduate from Sheridan this term. So I'm very proud of all those students, and thank you, Yawen, Milsi.
Well, thank you very much. What a good note to conclude your presentation on, although there's more to come, because now we go to rounds of questions. And our first round is 6 minutes each. And I have on my list the speakers will be Mr. Viersen, Ms. Damoff, Ms. Berube, Ms. Arnold, you're up for 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for our witnesses being here today. I want to go to Mr. Cardinal first. He was cut off early with his comments, something about the Gaspé, and I was just wondering if you could outline that particular scenario and just finish his comments around that. Mr. Cardinal?
Yes, that's quite nice of you. My third example was in Gaspésie, the Mi'kmaq Nation, which is really not a reserve. The members live mostly on the unceded traditional territories in the Gaspé region. But they don't really have a community to manage. They should be seen as other First Nations governments. So they asked for the SERP program. They received nothing, just $150,000. That wasn't much. They said Gaspé doesn't have a right to this assistance because they are not considered a reserve. Since the start of the crisis, the council is trying to fulfill its responsibilities towards members, and Gaspé just wants assistance for some of the additional costs associated to the crisis management brought about by the COVID-19. And what we see, the answer is basically the First Nations are being told that they cannot receive any money because they do not correspond to the criteria dictated by a colonialist view of First Nations management. We are very far from the nation-to-nation, government-to-government relationship that the Canadian government says it wants to maintain. So that was the third example I was trying to come up with to show some of the difficulties in reconciling the recognition of the First Nations governments with the COVID-19 crisis management.
Thank you, Mr. Cardinal. Mr. Chair, I'd like to just move a notice of motion right now. I was going to do that right at the beginning of my comments. I'll do that right now. Pursuant to the Standing Order 1082, that the committee undertake a comprehensive study of the Indian Act as an outdated colonial structure and the Act's contribution to systemic racism, inequality, violence, and injustice and poverty experienced by First Nations, and that the scope of the study include but not be limited to the discussion of the abolition of the Indian Act, the fiduciary responsibilities of the federal crown, and to improve living conditions on First Nations, community safety, and criminal justice reform, and that the witness list include ministers, the department officials, band councils, band members, individuals, and community groups, and that all meetings for this study be televised, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations with concrete steps to the government that can take to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to this report.
That is your notice of motion. You have about 3 minutes left in your questioning.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to turn to Ms. Gabrielle. In her comments, she talked about how it seemed difficult to enforce lockdown measures around her community. That's totally different than where the experience up in Northern Alberta. In Northern Alberta, typically most communities have maybe 2 or 3 routes in, and most of them were barricaded with folks monitoring the entrances and exits to the First Nation communities. Was that attempted in your case, in your community, and or is that totally unfeasible given the location of your community?
Well, after 3 centuries of chipping away at our community, it's a checkerboard which the federal government tried to address after 1990, and that because of that, there's certain areas where there are Quebecois living amongst us, and then there's Mohawks living in what's known as Oka, which is also Kanesatake. And so when the checkpoints went up to protect the community from, as I said, this free flow of people coming in who didn't want to stay home into our community, there was at first support from the mayor of Oka, and then it's quickly changed to, well, we have to open up the economy, right? This whole mindless economy first before human rights and before safety and well-being. And so there was threats, like as I mentioned, it was problematic. Many of us feel very vulnerable in the community on a daily basis, but this sort of enhanced it, because when something happens, we are hesitant to call the Sûreté du Québec because they're racist. Perhaps not all of them, but they're racist. And then on top of that, we live in a separatist province that has this preconceived notions that we are public enemy number 1, and that whatever kind of violence is besought upon us, we must deserve it. And so these people come in with impunity, whether it's the SQ officer spitting on a person at the checkpoint, or a doctor coming in and hitting one of the people at the checkpoints. And this being reported to who else? The SQ, who else do we have to report? It's very difficult to maintain security at checkpoints when the people at the checkpoints are not even allowed to ask for ID to say whether or not they're an actual resident and they can pass through the community. So it's neglect. It's a community being vilified, and we have racism surrounding us on a daily basis. On top of that, all the colonial rooted problems that has happened since forever, three centuries, but has been really made worse in the past 30 years since the siege.
Thanks, Ms. Gabriel. We're well over time. We'll go now for 6 minutes to Ms. Dumoff. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm coming to you as well from Oakville in the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I want to thank all of the witnesses today for their testimony. I'm going to focus my questions on Elijah because I'd really like to talk about some of the things you mentioned in terms of post-secondary. First of all, congratulations to the Sheridan grads. That's incredibly exciting, and please pass on my congratulations. Elijah, you were talking about the supports for your Indigenous learners at Sheridan. I'm wondering, some of that is the regular funding they get. I'm wondering if any of you, if you're aware of any of your students being able to access funding through that $75.2 million, and if they were not, what the barriers were to them accessing that funding.
So not that I'm aware of right now, because when that funding was announced, many of our students were already pretty much done at that point. So when that happens, a lot of our students were trying to get home. Some students could not get home, as I mentioned, so they're still living here in Oakville. So we did encourage a lot of our students to apply to the funding for the post-secondary support. And I think that's where the clarity isn't really there, because I know when I spoke to some of them, they didn't know that their band was supposed to be receiving money to support them while they're in school. So it's sort of like a broken telephone is how I see it when these announcements are made. And we're also expecting students who are probably 18, 19, 20, maybe 17 in some cases, where if they don't really know that's out there for them, then how are they supposed to find it? And I think communication is really key to that. A simplification of language is key, because if we're speaking these big government bureaucratic talk, nobody's going to really relate and understand what it's actually saying for them. So, and I think also too, there's also mistrust. So I know in some cases, some people don't trust the government, unfortunately. So then they're not going to access support that way either, where they would really trust the Indigenous Center if we had more information at a quicker time to say, here's what is out there for you. You should really consider applying to that. And I think that's where the regional offices come into play. I think there needs to be a stronger connection with regional offices and post-secondary institutions.
Connectivity you brought up, and when you and I spoke, Elijah, you were talking about the fact that Six Nations doesn't have reliable internet. So it's not just, you don't have to go to the north. Our colleague Mumlak is unable to join our meetings because of lack of internet in Baker Lake. But you don't have to go that far. You just go outside Hamilton, Ontario to Six Nations. So how critical is that connectivity for your students, especially as you're looking at September, where you may still be online? I don't know if Sheridan has made the final decision, but how critical is that connectivity for your students?
Oh, it's so critical. I would say that 98% of the reserve, Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve, doesn't have access to internet, proper internet anyway. If you do, it's usually about 3 megabytes per second or 5 megabytes per second. And it's a shame that this reserve is not in up north, or it's not somewhere far off. It's close to the town of Caledonia. It's close to Brantford. It's close to Simcoe County, London, Hamilton, and it doesn't have access to proper broadband internet services. So it's not that it's not impossible to bring it there. There's a lack of infrastructure that exists. So if we are requiring people to go to school in the fall still online, and so most of our students will be online as the fall, some programs won't be, but that's going to be a huge piece for students to access education supports. And in my other hat that I wear, I'm also a board of director member for our employment agency. I would say over 50% of our staff can't even work remotely because of where they live on the reserve. So they can't access the portals for employment supports for our community.
One of the pieces that I think I've certainly talked to my colleagues in the Liberal caucus is missing in all of this is youth voices. I'm just wondering what your thoughts on Indigenous youth-led funding being provided, and having some of those voices that you deal with as the director at Sheridan being shared with the committee to know what they're looking for in terms of access to funding.
Oh, it's so critical, I think, because then that opens up another lens through which they're seeing it. They're seeing it through as a student of 2020. They're seeing it as an Indigenous learner possibly coming from a reserve. They're seeing it as a learner in an urban setting. So they're going to bring a different lens to that table. So I would say that voice is really critical and needed in terms of making sure that the program is effective in what it's aiming to do, which is trying to provide educational outcomes for students. So the program should be reflective of who it serves, not for us, not the other way around.
And you have students not just from the GTA, you have students from the far north, you have students from all over Canada, right?
Yes.
And I think that's my time, Chair.
It is. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And I'm going to switch to French. Madam Berube.
Okay. Madam Berube, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the witness participating in this committee. I would also like to thank the technicians and the interpreters that are playing a key role in the committee. I'm on the traditional territory of the Algonquin, Anishinaabe, and the Cree of the Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik, EU. My question for Mr. Cardinal. I'm pleased that you're here today, Mr. Cardinal. Can you briefly talk about make a reference between the COVID-19 crisis and the rail crisis of the past few months? Yes, thank you. That's a great question. The railroad crisis showed us the difference of reconciling interest of economic development in traditional unceded territories. And that's what we see. Most of Quebec territory, as you know, is on unceded traditional native lands on which First Nations have rights and sometimes ancestral titles. It gives them a right to the territory itself, but the difference with the Wet'suwet'en people in BC is that most Quebec First Nations don't have any traditional government structure that can oppose the band councils. There are very few exceptions that are elected chiefs. They manage the band councils under the Indian Act, and then they have the inherent right for self-determination recognized in the Canadian government and the International Declaration on the First Nations Rights. So this goes beyond the limits of the community. What we must remember from the preceding crisis is the need for governments to recognize government's authority for the First Nations, not only on the reserved territory as such, but on a much broader territory. Those are the unceded traditional territories. Thank you. Another question, Mr. Cardinal. Knowing that you're also a communication specialist, could you tell us what you think of the media coverage as far as the Native people are concerned in these crises? To answer your question, I'll go back to the example I raised about the Oka Pack. If you look at media coverage, you realize that the Mohawk Council had a lot of difficulty transmitting its message, explaining its position as being based on the need to protect the health of its members. A lot of articles, reports introduce the story as bringing back some of the territorial conflicts opposing Kanesatake and the Oka municipality. I see the same issues as I raised during my testimony in the Vienne Commission on the relationships between Indigenous communities and certain public services in Quebec, especially if you look at the media coverage of Natives or Indigenous people and their role in journalism. I see three major categories of bias based on lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. First of all, not understanding the cultural difference. Some are more of an ideological nature, racism, and so on. And beyond some of these prejudices we can see in media coverage, you should add the difficulty of Native or Indigenous leaders to come before the media. There is a general indifference. It's very hard to correctly present Indigenous issues in the media, even if these are of a public interest. A few years ago, Richard Desjardins had a film on the First Nations called The Peuple Invisible, the Invisible People. He was talking about the Anishinaabe. So there is this invisible element of the Indigenous people that's still real present, and it causes a lot of problems. And the most important problem for me is the distorted image that the general population has when it comes to Indigenous people, because the media are transmitting or not transmitting certain types of messages. Mr. Chair, do I have any time left? So one last question, Mr. Cardinal. According to you, after the current COVID-19, economic recovery is one of the most important issues for governments. Is it also one of the priorities for Indigenous communities? Absolutely. The economic recovery is certainly a priority for First Nations, but there are some concerns. One of them is that we are not fully taking into account the interest of the Indigenous populations in the government's recovery plans. We see it in Bill C-61 in Quebec today. The head of the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec Labrador, Ghislain Picard, was before that commission, and he underlined Despite the urgent context, the government cannot get away from its commitments towards the First Nations. And he raised another concern. It's a major one for First Nations. It's the general protection of the environment, natural resources, and fauna. So the deconfinement and economic recovery should be seen as an opportunity for businesses and Indigenous communities. I must stress here a very interesting initiative from major Indigenous organizations that decided to come together to assist the federal government to better meet the needs of Indigenous people in economic development. They created a working group on COVID-19 Indigenous businesses, the task force. It's to provide a unique Indigenous voice to the federal government during this crisis. The group is now creating a major database on Indigenous businesses that should be used by federal governments. They also provide analysis on the prevalence and the impact of this crisis on populations and Indigenous businesses to make sure that they have assistance equivalent to that offered to other groups, unprecedented collaboration. And it's very important if we want to have a better representation of Indigenous people in the economic recovery plan in Canada. Thank you.
Another 6-minute round. Ms. Gazan, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank all the guests so far for your excellent testimony, and I will come back to questions shortly. But before I do, I'd like to dispose of the motion that I gave last week. So I move, and I hope we don't waste too much time debating the following: that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee invite the Minister of Indigenous Services and the Minister of Crown Relations to provide testimony regarding the supplementary estimates A 2020 to 2021 no later than June 16, 2020.
Seeing no comments, are we ready to take the vote? If we are, it will be a recorded vote by the clerk. Ms. Demoff, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair. I was just wondering if the member would also agree that the Minister for Northern, Minister Van Dal, also appear at that meeting. There are actually 3 ministers responsible for Indigenous and Northern affairs.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
Friendly amendment? Fine. Go ahead with the call of the vote, please, the division.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I would like to inform the committee that the list of members eligible to vote are the following: Jamie Schmel, Gary Vidal, Arnold Viersen, Bob Zimmer, Sylvie Berube, Leah Gazan, Amy Baptiste, Pam Damoff, Marcus Pulowski, Adam Van Koeverden, and Lenore Zan. When your name is called, please allow for a 2 to 3 second delay before answering. Your video should now be turned on.
il n'y a pas de traduction.
No translation?
Il n'y a pas d'interprète.
Again, before we proceed, I would like to inform the committee that the list of members eligible to vote are the following: Jamie Schmel, Gary Vidal, Arnold Viersen, Bob Zimmer, Sylvie Berube, Leah Gazan, Amy Baptiste, Pam Damoff, Marcus Pulowski, Adam Van Koeverden, Lenore Zan. When your name is called, please allow for a 2 to 3 second delay before answering. Your video should be turned on. When you are recognized, please state clearly and verbally if you are in favor or opposed to the vote. I will now proceed to the taking of the recorded division on the motion. Mr. Schmel.
I vote in favor.
Mr. Vidal.
I vote in favor.
Mr. Viersen.
Yeah, support that.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Madame Berube. Madame Berube.
Oui.
Yes.
Leah Gazan,
Yes.
Amy Baptiste,
Yes.
Pam Damuff,
In favor.
Marcus Pulowski,
Yes.
Adam Van Couverden,
In favor.
Lenore Zan.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, 11 yeas, 0 nays.
I declare the vote carried. Thank you very much. Ms. Kazan, let me give you 3 more minutes for your question.
Thank you, Mr. My question is for Ellen Gabriel. You spoke a little bit about 3 centuries of fighting for your rights, for your homeland, indicating that the pandemic has increased fear and uncertainty of more land dispossession. Can you explain about this a little bit further? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
First of all, I want to say that I am Longhouse. I don't vote in band council elections because it's an imposed system. I know Mr. Cardinal works for the band council in Gunnesadage, so I think what's going on is that, as I mentioned before, we have been made illegal by a 1924 law within Canada as traditional governments. And that the land dispossession continues. There's a housing development in nearby Saint-Joseph-du-Lac. There's the unknown status of the so-called eco-gift by a developer, Mr. Golan, who bought land. And I think it's also the uncertainty that we are excluded by the Band Council from knowing any kind of negotiations. It's the traditional governments that have the inherent rights and who have survived colonization that have the rights. And I guess what I really want to say, with all due respect to Madame Bérubé, you know, the questions you're asking should have been asked to an Indigenous person. And I really respect Mr. Cardinal, and I think you answered very well. I just feel like sometimes I'm in an anthropology session and I'm a third person looking in and people are speaking about us. So I would appreciate in the future that anything that has to do with people living in the community be addressed to the people who are from that community. Because land dispossession is continuing, housing development continues. A new home was built on the border of the Pines. We are far from resolving any of the land issues. And as I've mentioned previously, those checkpoints were not respected by the people in Oka. Our decision about Oka Park was not respected. This is something I think Serge did a good thing for. But we are so divided, and this is caused by government's coercion to divide and conquer our community, and it's got to stop. There has to be some kind of resolution to this problem. And 30 years later, we're marking another anniversary, and we're no further to resolving these issues. Within a pandemic, it's even worse.
Thanks very much. We go now to a 5-minute round, and the 5-minute round will begin with Mr. Zimmer, then Ms. Zan, Mr. Schmale, Mr. Baptiste. Mr. Zimmer for 5 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Just have a couple of questions for Mr. Watt and Mr. Williams. As a former teacher myself, also wrote a course about transition to trade. So I'm a former tradesman as well and teacher. So I'm really concerned about, I guess, that aspect of education is one thing that we can accomplish certain courses online, but those tangible hands-on courses I'm sure are going to be a challenge, if not now, if more in the future. But I guess my questions are currently the PPE, the question about courses that were, I guess, ongoing now. I know that some of the programs obviously stopped. Did you have access to adequate PPE? And during the crisis, if you could just answer that quickly, and I'll have a follow-up question. Mr. Williams?
So at Sheridan, so we completely shut down the school. So all schools within a week of its span transitioned to online. So we had to transition hundreds and hundreds of programs online. And I think this is where the learning curve comes into play for some students, because they went from being in person to learning online. But we are going to pilot in person in the summer with a few students that have to do nursing programs. So we're going to pilot that, and then for the fall, see how that's going to work out for social distancing.
I'm sure we would appreciate what you find out there. I think how successful or not, I guess, is going to be interesting for us to know. And Mr. Watt, any comments about the PPE and the access to it prior?
PPE meaning the
personal protective equipment and the masks and hand sanitizer and the like. Yeah.
Okay, I do know that within Nunavik here now, we have airlines going between communities. So they are providing masks. As for our schools, this is something that's going to be that's still in discussion. I know that we have approximately 370 adults that are attending our vocational training centers. So this is something that we're working on right now.
So Mr. Watt, just to follow up with that, so they're attending currently right now as we speak?
Right now, what we do have is all courses have been put on hold in regards to any vocational training.
Okay.
But we are providing access for them to be able to finish some of their courses online and even take examinations.
So my quick follow-up question to that is, where do we go from here? And I know the challenges in my file again is economic development. So I'm asking it from that perspective. Is that seeing that we definitely need to get our economies going again, and that education is a big part of that. As a former carpentry student and carpenter myself, I knew how important it was to have those students getting out into the workforce. So I guess from here on is where I'm concerned about the PPE and the access to it and the access to testing, et cetera, to get us kind of back to this new normal. Because I have children myself that are in school. And it's a stopgap measure, but it certainly isn't where we want to be. And I just want to know, where do you see education being, getting back to those normal sessions of in-class, carpentry students doing carpentry work in those trade schools? How soon do you see us getting there? And do you see, again, the access to the appropriate PPE? Is that possible to get us there? We'll start with Mr. Williams again.
I would say yes. I would say yes, we can get there. And I think once we find out how the summer is going to go in July, when we have some students back, we'll understand more of how the social distancing can work. But to this, what I'll say to being in class again, I think most of our programs will be online for the fall term. I think what we're really going to be preparing for is a winter with a lot more classes being offered in person. So it's going to be challenging, but I think we'll have to work all that out with our local public health agency in terms of PPE access and all of that.
Sure, Mr. Watt.
Recently, we just had our Council of Commissioners meeting, and we were advised that we are trying to reopen our schools. They're all different sizes of schools. Some are very small, some much larger. We've been advised that it's going to take us to bring in transit employees in phases. So I think right now they're looking at different scenarios. We're not working single-handedly. We're working with the region here. Kativik Regional Government has created these subcommittees to look at ways as how we're going to reopen Nunavik. And as much as we want to open and provide easy access to education and these trainings, right now it's the mayors in the communities that have a big say in this right now. In fact, we had our mayor go on the radio this morning informing the population that be rest assured that this is going to be a long journey, that it's going to take approximately 2 years.
Let me leave it right there.
To quote unquote normal.
Thanks, Mr. Watt. Ms. Zan, we are 5 minutes for you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and merci, Walalan, and hello to everybody from the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq here in northern Nova Scotia. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to Mr. Elijah Williams for your students. That's wonderful to hear. Many of our students from Truro actually go to Sheridan College to study musical theater and things like that. So I'm well acquainted with it. So congratulations. That's really great news. Also, I just wanted to say that about education, one of the problems that I have seen over the years occurring in education is that my parents were both teachers, and when we moved to Nova Scotia from Australia, my mother said that the books that she was supposed to teach history from were full of racist epithets.
I'm sorry.
traduction.
There's
translation.
Ms. Zan, there's no translation right now. We're going to just suspend briefly and allow the text to see if they can fix that. Do we need constant speaking to work on the translation, Madam Clerk? A pack of pickled peppers. And now you have 4 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, let me just start right in there again. Listen, I think one of the problems in Canada, and actually probably most of the world, is when it comes to education, the textbooks that have been used for many years, have been racist. So when my mother and father and I moved to Nova Scotia from Australia back in 1968, my mom said that she was supposed to teach history, and she showed her class. She showed them the history books, and she said, "I'm going to show you, class, where these books belong." Clunk. She threw them in the garbage cans in front of the class. And she said, "I refuse to teach you because these are racist for the Black community and for our First Nations people. It's not true what they're teaching." My father taught at the Teachers College in Truro, and there were no Mi'kmaq teachers, none in Nova Scotia. So he and Noel Knockwood and Bernie Francis, two incredible Mi'kmaq gentlemen from Nova Scotia, got together and they put a program together called the Mi'kmaq Teachers Training Program. This is in the early 70s. And they trained Mi'kmaq students to become teachers, and they graduated 13 teachers. Now, some government of the day eliminated that program after that. And, I think that this is part of the problem. There's not enough Indigenous peoples and First Nations people in the system. And the amount of history that people have been learning, Canadians have been learning, a lot of it is false. So I would say this has contributed to the racism in this country, and I'd just like to know what any of you might think or about this, and what if you think that this has contributed, and what we can do to change things.
We have a minute to answer that. Go ahead.
Who would like to answer?
I can speak on that. I think what the K-12 system has perpetuated is a lot of misinformation and stereotypes. So what I find working in post-secondary is that we're almost trying to re-educate people. A lot of this information should have already been known about who Indigenous people are, the relationship between Indigenous people and the Crown, different assimilation policies that happen. But what I find is when they come to college or come to university, nobody knows that. It's sort of like a first shock. So the provinces have to be encouraged to do more in this regard, to do better in terms of re-educating people and re-educating children and making sure that the curricula is relevant to what's happening right now in 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ms. Dan. Sorry about all of that. We go now for 5 minutes to Mr. Schmale.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your testimony. Maybe I'll start with, I guess there's a lot to choose from here. Ms. Gabrielle, if I could. You were saying you had some frustrations with the department, especially when it comes to communication with the minister. Did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, this has gone on for over 100 years, but more recently we've sent several letters. The traditional Longhouse people, which is the Haudenosaunee people, have been excluded from any decision-making processes on land. It's not about the administration of services, it's about negotiations of land. And Minister Bennett has refused to intervene on any development that's taking place on disputed land. She refuses to say that we have any kind of rights. She always defers to the Van Council. So it's a colonial system that's created to undermine the traditional governments that existed pre-European arrival. And so it makes no sense for the government to pick and choose which part of our inherent rights that they're going to allow us to, again, the colonizer allowing us to enjoy, even though there's international human rights norms that talk about respect and the right to self-determination. So it's a violation of the rule of law that we keep hearing being thrown at us.
Just out of curiosity, and I bring this up because there was a op-ed in the Vancouver Sun this morning regarding the governance structure of the Wet'suwet'en. And I'm just curious, you mentioned the governance structure. How do you see, or how do you propose, or even just your thoughts on governance structure?
Well, there's difference. I mean, we had proposed in 1990 that the Band Council can do with the services. They are service providers. But when it has to do with how the land is being used, development, or anything that has to do with the land, including Oka Park, that the traditional governments that have existed for centuries be the ones that the governments speak to. This is the true nation-to-nation relationship, rather than a Band Council that's created by Canada, dealing with the government, because it's under Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. So it's a department of itself, even though there's an election. So we were just asking for a meeting, and we have been denied over and over again, even from the Prime Minister, who said, go speak to Carolyn Bennett, who says, go speak to the Band Council. So in the meantime, third parties are taking our land. In the meantime, if we try and defend our lands through protests or barricades, we are the criminals. And as we've seen in Wet'suwet'en, it seems like the authorities, the policing authorities, are the ones who are working for the third parties. They are not there to defend Indigenous people's safety and security. They're there to defend corporate interests. And that's what we see all over Indigenous territories.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Unless you have anything else to add, I will move to my next round of questioning.
Well, I think traditional governments have been recognized at the international level. I don't see why Canada is refusing and standing firm in the colonial structure that only benefits them.
Well, actually, before I move on, maybe I will stay on this topic just a little bit longer. My colleague, Mr. Beerson, read off a motion that we were looking to study. Do you see the desire to move away from the Indian Act if possible?
If you're going to respect our self-determination, and if you're going to respect traditional forms of governments, and that traditional people be represented in any kind of discussion, because for us, the women are the title holders to the land, and the women are not being respected by a feminist someone who claims to be feminist, like Minister Carolyn Bennett. So I would like to see something that moves in the way of relationship building. And then let's talk about nation-to-nation relationships. But let's also put a hold on all development that's going on, because the economy can survive in a sustainable way without resource development or housing developments.
That's just about it, Jamie. 10 seconds.
Okay, maybe I'll pick up on my next round.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we have Mr. Jaime Batiste for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I'm coming to you from the Mi'kmaq community of Eskasoni, which is on unceded land. I would like to just, I've heard Mr. Williams and Ms. Gabriel talk about barriers that exist for Indigenous people and institutional racism. I'm reminded of my friend Donald Marshall, the late Donald Marshall Jr., and his inquiry, and his wrongful conviction highlighted racism within the justice system, made several recommendations about inclusion in education. I'm wondering, what ways can we best decolonize education, take down barriers that exist for Indigenous people in education, and at the same time create awareness of our shared Indigenous histories and contributions to Canada? And if you guys could each do 2 minutes, that would be very helpful.
Who's first?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a whole list of things that need to be done. I think institutions are inherently colonial by nature. When we look at where education has come from, it comes from the British and the Crown. So when we look at education, then what education institutions have to do is make space for Indigenous voices to be there. And by making space, you have to really look at a re-examination of policy, not only internally to the school, but externally through the ministry of who oversees the education sector. We have to look at how the intersection between communities and post-secondary can be built better in terms of the relationship. I think what we've seen through post-secondary or higher learning is that there's an imposition of Eurocentric views on how people should learn or how people should view themselves. So we really have to see a re-examination of how we conduct education. So it's really we really have to keep a game-changing moment. So it's redefining what education can be for people, allowing for different modes of learning, and allowing for communities to determine their own models of education. So allowing for different Indigenous communities to say they want this for their community as education. So not the universities or colleges dictating that.
Thank you. Ms. Gabriel?
Well, I think language, culture, land, and something that is combined that reflects Indigenous people's identity and those ancestral teachings that talk about the land. And as we live in these uncertain times, with climate change being a very real issue for whether you're living up north or down here, our lives have been impacted. And I think we really need to bring down those barriers that the provinces put up in not respecting our Indigenous academics to help us change the education system, to decolonize it. There has been a lot of walls been put up by Quebec over the years that I've experienced it. And our Indigenous academics have a lot of things to share, but also our elders. We don't need to have letters behind our names to be good teachers, right? So we have those elders that can teach the language, that can teach those teachings, but also it's about relationship sharing. And if we're talking about battling racism, that we teach that to the youth. Everything that we do in this society, the youth and the elders and everybody in between needs to work as one team. And I don't think that works in education. I think it's a very isolated, very compartmentalized form of education. And as you know, as our ancestors said in the 60s and 70s, Indigenous control over Indigenous education. And I think that's what we need to start working on in a really full and effective participation with provinces and the federal government.
1 minute, Jaime.
Okay, Ms. Gabriel, I'd like you to comment on what you feel UNDRIP would do for us if we were to implement that in Canada. And
well, the UN Declaration is that framework of reconciliation, even not just for the settlers society, but for us as well, that we understand that this is what makes us Opohua. This is what makes us as Indigenous people, and that land is part of that. Those songs, that energy sharing, that respect, that what we're doing today will impact 7 generations from now. Those are the things that I think that we need to start considering and not let Eurocentric views further impact our education system.
And that brings us to time. Thanks, Mr. Batiste. We now go to a 2.5-minute round of questions. I have Ms. Michaud and Ms. Kakak, I believe, has joined us and is on the line. So first of all, Ms. Michaud, 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout d'abord, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses. My question for Mr. Cardinal. I would like to say a word on this distinctions in the regions that you mentioned earlier, the third example. In what ways are the members that are not necessarily living on the reserves, don't necessarily have access to federal assistance? What are the impacts specifically within this crisis? I would just like to hear more from you on that. Yes, first of all, especially in the regions and throughout the areas where First Nations are living without a community on reserves or outside, they receive services either from the provincial government or the federal government. So sometimes people are a little bit confused as to who should offer services to members of certain First Nations. And in the current crisis, the members turn to their governments, at least the Council of the First Nations. They have the responsibility of making sure of the safety and health of the members. So this brings about some degree of competition between the governments. It's mostly about financial resources. In the case of Gaspé, as I said, the fact that they are not on reserve, they don't meet the criteria of the Indian Act, so they don't receive the same level of assistance as they had. The councils cannot help these people. The members of the First Nations are sent to the other forms of government assistance, provincial, municipal, federal. That is a major difficulty which we face. And so to resolve these issues, what solutions? You're talking about recognition of the councils as a form of government. We spoke about this before the crisis. This has come to the forefront. But what should the government do to provide aid to these people who are somewhat at a loss where to turn? Yeah, I think it's mostly about having some knowledge about the issue and resources. There is a systemic issue at stake. The way the government operates, it's very difficult to recognize the self-determination of First Nations. So we must go beyond the Indian Act. It's a political decision, a meeting of the minds between the government and the First Nations, and your role as a committee is very important, and I thank you because you're doing very important work. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Matna, thank you, Chair. As always, thank you to all the interpreters and the IT team. Thank you to all the witnesses and being here and sharing your experiences and valuable knowledge. My questions will be for Mr. Watt. And Mr. Watt, I'm just going to ask that you stick to about a minute if you can, just because of my time crunch. So one of the real changes we've faced in Nunavut when it comes to safely delivering education during the pandemic has been internet connectivity in our communities. Can you discuss how you have been able to overcome, your organization rather has been able to overcome these challenges, and what further supports would you need if the pandemic extended into the fall?
We have not resolved anything when it comes to broadband internet, high speed. It's very slow. We definitely need support. We need to have the federal government and both governments to work on this, because I think my connectivity here is already a challenge. I've been disconnected for
It's disconnected now. Perhaps, Ms. Kakak, you could move to another question.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, great, sorry. So this question will be for Mr. Williams. Can you talk about the impact that around not having enough Indigenous voices in the classroom, and what Indigenous education could look like?
So the impact of not having many students within the classroom is that when there are Indigenous students in the classroom, they are usually the ones being called on to be almost the voice of all Indigenous people. So it creates an unreasonable burden on the student to speak truth to what kind of the discussion that's going on. So when a student is educated within their own community, they're not faced with that same challenges. So we have to do something about re-educating our staff in terms of the experience of Indigenous people, but also supporting communities in terms of allowing communities to determine education for themselves as well, because we have the systems developed. It's just a matter of working together. And what we know from Indigenous students in the classroom is that they usually experience more racism than anyone because of those questions. And sometimes they are stereotypical or outright racist, depending on the topic.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. And we go to a 5-minute round now. I have Mr. Vidal, Vancouverton, Viersen, and Pulowski. Mr. Vidal, 5 minutes. Please start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is going to be for Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, before COVID hit, I had the opportunity to have some ongoing discussions with some people at the University of Saskatchewan and their approach to indigenization of their campus and how they're trying to just build that presence within their own campus. I'm interested in hearing about the programs that your college was using before the pandemic began that was very successful in Indigenous engagement. So maybe even referred out of those 51 grads that you talked about, and congratulations for that. What are the programs that Sheridan is utilizing that is engaging Indigenous people very successfully?
So we have our Elder in Residence program that is successful in terms of bringing the culture to campus. So students will have access to an elder, and if they are far from community, it sort of the elder that we have reminds them of their own community. We do vigorous student engagement support. So what we do is we personally call all students to check in on them, start of term and end of term, and even post the next term to see if there's anything that we could do for if they are on academic probation or suspension. In terms of our strategy at Sheridan, we have adopted 3 things that we're going to focus on for the next 4 to 5 years, which is understanding the truth. Our whole learning community has to understand the truth of what has happened in the past, because quite frankly, it explains a lot of what is happening right now. And then unwavering commitment to student supports for students, so increasing our number of Indigenous staff and access to spaces. And our third is redeveloping our curriculum. So really re-examining every single program in terms of where we can include Indigenous content and where we can make sure that there's proper representation, and especially for critical programs like nursing, community justice, law, and a lot of health programs.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move to Mr. Watt, and maybe I'll come back to you, Mr. Williams. I'll see how much time I have, okay? Mr. Watt, in your presentation, you talked about on-land education, and I quote from your recommendations where it says, the Inuit culture and identity cannot be disassociated from the territory. On the land education programs and activities offer unique educational opportunities that connect youth to their language, identity, and communities. Here in Northern Saskatchewan, we talk a lot about the term we use here is land-based learning, which I think sounds very similar to this, where we're trying to connect youth to the culture and to their history. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the on-land learning, what it looks like, and what makes it effective in educating young people?
Thank you very much for that question. Just recently, there's been a group of students that just went out on the land where they get a chance to, I guess it taps into their rites of passage, their Inuit rites of passage. I find way too often that we separate our Inuit rites of passage with Western education. Inuit rites of passage is very similar to a form of learning. And I believe right now we have an opportunity to bridge Western education with Inuit knowledge, which is our Inuit rites of passage. I do know that when I was a young man and I was brought out on the land, I still remember the skills that I learned from that. So I think it's very critical to not separate Western education with traditional knowledge. I think there needs to be a way to support each other, find ways to complement each other. In fact, through Inuit, we are creating a new approach, which is called Inuit environmental science, where we're trying to bridge on-land programming with science. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
I appreciate that answer. I'm going to jump back to Mr. Williams. I do end up 30 seconds here. So, Mr. Williams, you talked about the success you've had kind of pre-pandemic, whatever. I'm just wondering, with all the stuff that's changed, Can you speak to how you see these same programs that you talked about being successful earlier, how they're going to be affected potentially with distance learning and some of the limitations, and what this might look like come fall for you post-pandemic, or maybe not post-pandemic, but post the initial phases here that we've talked about?
We're well past time. Very briefly.
Just briefly, that what we're going to have to really do is adjust what we do. So there's going to be more online presentations with elders or more online events. And so what we'll do is make sure that we're always available for somebody to call in more quickly.
Thanks for that. And now to Mr. Van Couverden for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to all the witnesses today. Your insight has been so valuable. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory in Ottawa, in our nation's capital. And given that we are fortunate enough to have witnesses from Inuit, Haudenosaunee, and the Mohawk nations, I'd also like to acknowledge how I got here, which is indirectly in a kayak, which is an Inuit invention. And the being a white guy from Oakville, the appropriation is not lost on me, but I am grateful for the invention because it allowed me to explore the world and certainly our country. My question is around better outcomes in education for Indigenous youth. So I'll ask Mr. Williams and Madam Gabriel if you could elaborate a little bit on how education empowers and connects youth back to the land and through traditional practices, as well as provides better mental health and resilience for these youth. This has been a challenging time for kids across our nation, but certainly even more so for those who are vulnerable prior to COVID-19. We've heard from a lot of kids who are having a tough time, and certainly university students heading back to college or university with an uncertain future. So I want to recognize that it's tougher for most of the Indigenous youth across the country, and I'd like to hear how we can better serve them. Perhaps I'd ask Ms. Gabriel to go first.
It's a really good question, and thank you for that, Mr. Van Couverden. One of the things that we started here was an adult immersion program for the youth to learn the language. It's been a bit difficult now with COVID because all our first language speakers are elders, and they don't really use Zoom. They're starting to learn. But it's really important for them to learn their history, just as it is for Canadians to learn their own history. And the issue with the land is that a lot of our medicines are on the land. The languages that we use are that strengthening the relationship of our lands with all our relations. I'm a Turtle clan, so any turtle is my relative in a sense. So it links us to our ancestry. It links us to that creation story that we as Haudenosaunee people enjoy. The richness of those stories strengthen our identity. And the curriculum that we see now is exactly what people have been talking about, that old curriculum of just trying to pass kids through secondary 5. So I know Mr. Williams has a lot of things to also add, and I don't want to take too much time, but I thank you for asking.
I would add to that what it allows students to do when they do go to school is that it allows for the exploration of identity. I know for many students, there's a lot of students that don't know who they are. They don't know where they've come from. And there's some students that have status, but they don't know where they've come from. So what our center does, we provide for those conversations to happen. We make events around that. We bring in different guest speakers. We had people like Thomas King come in and do like a reading of his book. So I think what school does, it allows for that identity exploration, and it also, once there's one student that goes, there seems to be like your cousins are interested, your family members. I know for myself, my nieces and nephews started to go to post-secondary. So once you see a positive example of a role model and you can start seeing yourself in post-secondary from other students, then that is so transformational. It's nice to see when you see someone come in their first year and when they leave, how much of a positive impact that it had on them.
Mr. Watt, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to ask if Mr. Watt could provide. I know you're having some connectivity issues, sir, but if you do have something to add, we'd love to hear some northern perspective.
Yeah. Last week we had an online graduation for our Nunavik Sibunit program, which is something that it's a kind of similar, or it is almost exactly like Nunavut, Sibunit, and I tell you, our students, when they take on that program, they get to know their identity, they get to know where they come from, they get to know their history, and it is a great platform for them to get over their culture shock, because all our students are transported from this region in order to go to post-secondary studies. It's a fly-in community. So I just wanted to add on that once our youth get to know where they come from, their history, they go a long way.
That's a good
Thank you,
place
Mr.
to
Watt.
finish. Right on time.
Just wanted to tell Mr. Watt that I had the pleasure of flying through your community once and had a day to stop over, and it's a beautiful place, Kuujjuaq. So
Thank you.
Hopefully to visit again sometime.
Mr. Viersen, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Just go back to Miss Gabrielle there. We were just talking last time I had the floor a little bit about the having barricades at the entrances to our community. I'm just wondering what does it look like in her community if somebody gets contracts COVID and has to go to the hospital? Is that possible to be treated in your own community, or do you have to go outside of the community? And have there been like a large proportion of the community has they had to go off reserve for treatment?
First of all, I just want to correct you. They're not barricades, they're checkpoints. And we're 62 kilometers northwest of Montreal. They did some tests May 29th and the 30th. And, you know, Quebec has one of the highest cases across Canada, 3/4 of the deaths. And we're starting to finally get some help in regards to dealing with COVID. But if they do, they would have to either go to Saint Eustache, which is about 20-25 minutes drive. So it's very problematic for us to go there. I would prefer to go to Montreal myself.
Okay. Basically, the question is have the checkpoints been effective in preventing COVID from coming to your community?
Well, so far, there's been no cases that I know of. I know that now that the shops are open, that could very well change. There are still checkpoints to come right into the community where we reside. Time will tell whether or not letting people into the community to purchase their products will change that status that we have of no cases so far.
Getting gloves and face masks in Northern Alberta has been a bit of a challenge for our First Nations communities, just due to the fact that it's great distances. But the province has been handing them out through the A&Ws and McDonald's. That seems to be working. Has your community? Does everybody have gloves and face masks? And if they don't, are they available in your community?
You could get them at the local pharmacy. That's where most people pick them up. And even then, it took a while for us to get those.
Mr. Watt, your community, if I was at your house right now and I wanted some gloves and a face mask, how readily available is that?
You'd have to go to our health center here. They're not made available. I do know that in our stores, they do have hand sanitizers. But as for gloves and mitts right now, considering that we did have 16 cases, active cases for a while, but they've all recovered. So right now, we have kind of antsy about getting infected. They're very closed right now.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear that everybody's recovered. Mr. Williams, with the cohort of students that you deal with on a regular basis, have there been any cases, and has your department been involved at all in handing out masks and gloves?
So no cases that we're aware of. And since we shut down our school, so there's no access to campuses, we didn't have to provide any masks, but we did provide when students did need sort of cultural support. So if they needed sage sweetgrass, we sent that to them. But in terms of medical supplies, a lot of students went home back to their communities.
Okay. What about like mental health for many of the people in my community? Not being able to hang out together has been a challenge, and I know that for our First Nation communities, that's also a big part of their life. Have you been hearing anything on that regard?
Oh yes, a lot of people said it's been that adjustment of not seeing people as worse for some people. So what we do is we make sure that if we do identify someone that's in a sort of critical need, we'll have counselors reach out, our student at risk and responsibility officer, and we will also refer them to the First Nations mental health and wellness line as well, just for as a 24-hour support. So there's added support, and we do make sure that if they are from a reserve or near an urban center, we make sure that they're connected to both services.
Thanks very much.
There.
Thank you. We have 1 5-minute question time now for Mr. Pulowski. Go ahead, please.
So I think on this call, we have a lot of witnesses who are educators, if I'm not wrong. And certainly education is probably the best way out of poverty. And so it's an important thing for everybody. But there's education that occurs in school, and there's education that doesn't occur in school. And certainly I've been a lot of years in university, apparently not enough to know the difference between when someone's speaking a Nuktatu and when they're speaking English. But I would suggest that some of the things that I've learned that are most important in life have been things that I have learned when I have not been in school, not just what I've learned in school. So in keeping with that, I wanted to ask Mr. Watt, because he talked about learning on the land, and this seems to me an important thing, but I wondered whether that was also offered to non-Indigenous people in the community, because it would seem to me an important learning experience also for non-Indigenous people in the North to see the way the Indigenous people traditionally live.
Good question, and a quick answer is that we are a school board that has a dual mandate, which is to provide education to anyone living in Nunavik, as well as protecting our culture and language. So any child, any student, any youth that is within our school board has every right to participate in our land programs. So we're open. We are more than open to engaging non-Inuit to participate in any Andalan programs.
And have some non-Inuit people taken part in that as well?
Yes, they have students. We have on average around 60 to 80 non-Inuit that are in our communities. I'm just talking about Kutruk here. There's 14 communities altogether. So we are very open. We have an open hand policy where we engage and ensure that our students are participating, whether they are Inuit or non-Inuit.
And I wonder now, when certainly racism is very much in the limelight now, and how do you address racism? And again, when you look at what you teach formally in school versus what doesn't occur in school, and how do you find bringing people onto the land, non-Inuit people? Do you think that gives them an added appreciation for Indigenous ways of doing things, Indigenous outlook?
Very quickly, once you're out on the land, you forget about racism. You are so immersed with being on the land that you forget about that. So the best medicine is being on the land.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic answer. Maybe I could ask Mr. Williams that too. When it comes to addressing racism, how much is it something that you can do in the classroom?
Well, I think it goes beyond the classroom. I think it goes in terms of how we teach people and what we're teaching them. So when we look at report 5 of the Auditor General report on socioeconomic gaps on First Nations Reserve, you look at the graduation rate alone, only 24% of students in 2016 graduated is what the auditor identified. So we really have to examine, are we teaching the right content to students? Do the students see themselves? Is there something that the policy has failed to do? Because, like you said, education generally gets people out of poverty, but if only 24% of our people are graduating, that's a big problem. And this is something that the department should really be focusing on in terms of economic prosperity when it comes to economic development and opportunity. Because when you look at that report, it highlights a discrepancy there as well too.
We're at the time for the meeting. Mr. Pawlowski, thank you for that very interesting perspective. I want to thank our witnesses so much. This has been so fascinating for all of us. We're learning a lot, but we have much more to learn. So thank you once again. And I'm just going to ask the clerk if she might indulge me. If I adjourn the meeting, could I leave the line open for 1 minute to ask a question of two of our, is that permitted under the rules of the, can we adjourn the meeting now? But leave the line open for 30 seconds? Okay, I saw a positive nod.
Okay, so
okay.
We're adjourning?
This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
And